Hello, all my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Now, today's video, I'm going to show you how to make the Supernova wrap shawl. It's also a wrap scarf or a super scarf because it measures about 33 inches across and it's about 84 inches long. It can be a nice warm wrap, it can be a super scarf, or even made as a throw for maybe your bed or chair. We're also going to take just a couple minutes and talk about some simple ways to help us crochet with some of these bumpy yarns. They're called boucle. And a boucle yarn is a yarn that has those bumpy fibers, and it can make it difficult to see your stitches. And so I'm going to give you just a couple of quick tips to help with that. Now you can find this complete pattern along with those tips and some new pictures on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video in that description box. To make our Supernova oversized scarf or wrap with fringe, you're going to need approximately 32 ounces of yarn, which is roughly around 480 to 500 yards. It takes a lot because it is a big oversized scarf or wrap, and of course we're going to add that fringe as well. So what's a boucle yarn? Your boucle yarns, the most popular one, of course, is the homespun from Lion brand. And if we take a strand of this, you can see it has a twist with a thread going through it. It's very bumpy. And the thing that makes this struggle with this yarn is that it's very difficult to see our stitches. It's also next to impossible if you make a mistake to frog it. And so I'm going to show you some simple techniques when we start our project of some things that you can do to help you. All right, this is another one that I really like. This is Country Loom from Loops and Threads. And this one is a variegated. It's very pretty. The one we used for our project is called Stellar from Red Heart, and it is a bulky number 6. And if you want to do a bulky number 6, you can. But remember, it's going to come out just a little bit bigger than our project. Okay? Any of your bulky 5 yarns will work for this project. And also, if you don't want to do one of these bumpy yarns and you just want to use a chunky yarn that's a basic acrylic or wool or something, you certainly can. It will work out just fine. You'll just need to measure as you go, and it might be a little shorter or a little wider depending on your stitches and your tension. This pattern is very versatile. So what we're going to do for our demo today to show you how to crochet with this bumpy yarn as well as make our scarf, we're going to be using this light blue. That way you can see my stitches. This one is called Waterfall. It is a bulky 5. We're going to be stitching today with our N, and the N hook is a 9mm crochet hook. Now, if you look in your crochet hook case or whatever, you're going to see that there's also an N that's a 10mm. That one's a little bit too big. And we're using this N hook because you're going to need to make your stitches just a little bit looser so you can see them. But we'll talk more about that in just a second. You'll need a nice needle with a nice big eye. You'll need a pair of scissors. And then you'll also need a ruler so that we can make our fringe. And I'll show you how to do that fringe at the end of the video. All right, let's get started. To make our oversized scarf or wrap shawl, you're going to need to chain 67 chains. When you're working with this kind of yarn, your beginning chain needs to be more loose than normal. I'm not going to be doing the whole 67. I'm going to do a swatch. And if you want to practice with the swatch, it's a really good idea. And I'm going to be doing a swatch of 27 chains. So we're going to make our slip knot. We'll put our hook in, and we're going to chain loosely. And I'm holding it a little looser than I normally do. There's a couple of reasons for this. This will help us find our chains when we need them. And it will also give us just a little bit of stretch on the one end of our shawl or scarf. We don't want it to be all puckered up. One thing I do suggest, especially on this project, is to grab some stitch markers or maybe some safety pins or paper clips, whatever you use for a stitch marker. Let me start over. I'm going to do my slip knot, and then I'm going to chain my first 10 rather loosely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, there's my 10th chain. I'm going to grab one of these stitch markers, and I'm going to mark that chain. That way, I don't have to keep recounting that. I know that there are 10 chains there, and that's another thing that will help you in keeping track of your chains. So I have 10, so I'm going to do 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I'll grab another stitch marker, and I'm trying not to use blue so it doesn't get confusing and I can see my stitch markers. Let's see. There we go. So now I know I have chained 20 chains, and you can see they're very loose. So if you're going to do the project, you're going to need to chain 67 chains. I'm doing a swatch, so I'm only chaining 27. So I have stitched my 27, and again, you need to have 67 for your project. And I'm going to go ahead and leave these stitch markers in. Normally I take them out, but with this bumpy yarn, this is going to tell me where my next 10 begin, and I'll take them out as I go. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a double crochet in the 5th chain from the hook. Well, how do we find that? You're going to need to look and use your finger and your thumb. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, I've got my thumb in there, so I'm going to yarn over and go in that 5th stitch and stitch a double crochet. And you'll notice I'm stitching rather loosely. And I'm going to go ahead and chain 1. Now, we stitched in the 5th chain because this counts as a double crochet, chain 1. All right, so now we chained 1. We're going to skip the next stitch. See how I've got that with my thumb? And stitch a double crochet in the next stitch. So you're going to need to use your fingers and your thumbs to find those stitches. And chain 1. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take this stitch marker out. And so what you're going to do, and once you do this initial row, the rest of this is easy. So don't panic and think I can't do this. You can do this. All right, so we've double crocheted, chained 1. All right, where's our next chain? Right here. So now we're going to stitch in our next chain. As this is the one we stitched in. Here's the one we're skipping, and here's the next. Now, if you're having trouble even finding them with your thumb and your finger, go ahead and chain 1. You can go ahead and take your stitch markers and mark every other chain going across if that will help you. Because what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next. Chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet. Whoops, I need my yarn over. There we go. in the next. This particular row, take your time, go slow, use that finger and thumb to find those chains. And if you've stitched 67, you're going to have 33 double crochets, and then you'll have 32 chain one spaces in between, because you're going to end on a double crochet. All right, so we're going to repeat across, chain one, skip one, and double crochet in the next. And if you're a person who normally has a tight tension, loosen up. And if it's not loosening up, you can go up to the 10mm crochet hook if you're just stitching way too tightly. This particular type of yarn needs to be stitched super loose. All right, so we're going to continue to work across, double crochet in the next, chain one, skip one, double crochet in the next, chain one, skip one, and repeat this, working all the way across our row. So I completed row one. We double crocheted in the next, chain one, skip one, double crochet in the next. Now, this is the hardest part of this particular project. Once you get to the end, your double crochet in the last stitch and chain four. Okay, and that you need to have 33 double crochets and 31 chain one spaces in between. But I'm going to tell you, if you ended up with one more or one less because you maybe put it in a wrong spot, it's not going to hurt anything really. As long as you've got your double crochet at the end and the beginning of each row. All right, it happens sometimes with this particular type of yarn because it is very hard to find your stitches. So don't get yourself all frustrated, because from here on out, this is a super easy pattern. The main thing is to keep your stitches a little looser than you're normally going to stitch, and it will work out just fine. So once we've stitched our last double crochet, we're going to chain four and turn. And again, I'm working on a swatch, not the big project. The chain four counts as a double crochet, chain one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to double crochet in the next double crochet. And again, we're stitching loosely and chain one. Now we'll go to the next double crochet and stitch a double crochet in the double crochet and chain one. All right, I did notice that there's a knot in my yarn there. Since this is a swatch, we're not going to worry about it right now. All right, so chain one, we're going to skip that chain one in between and double crochet in the double crochet. So basically we're stitching a mesh pattern. And this works really great for this project because it's easy to find your stitches and it looks beautiful. All right, so we're going to work across our row, chain one, double crochet in the double crochet, chain one, skip that chain one space, and double crochet in the double crochet. And this will keep our stitches all neatly lined up and easy to find them. And we make these little blocks. It looks beautiful, it's fun, and it's a great project for this type of yarn. So we're going to continue across, double crochet in the double crochet, chain one, skip that chain one space, and double crochet in the next double crochet. Now, wasn't row two a whole lot easier than row one? Well, now you know what you're doing. We're going to chain four we're going to turn our work. Our chain 4 counts as a double crochet, chain 1. So we'll double crochet in the next double crochet and chain 1. And then we'll repeat what we did on row 2. Double crochet in the next double crochet and chain 1. And we'll repeat this, working all the way across our row. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the next double crochet. And remember to stitch your stitches loosely so that everything lays nice and pretty. We don't want it to be puckered even in the middle. It's very easy to forget and go back to stitching a little bit tighter. That string on there. There we go. Because if you change your tension, it's going to pull that row in, and you don't want that. You want it all to stay nice and loose. And again, if you're struggling with that, you can always go up a hook size so that you can keep your tension a little bit loose. All right, so we're just going to continue stitching across this row, just like we did on row 2. I've completed row 3 on my swatch, and one thing I wanted to mention, when you get back over here, remember on this previous row, this was a chain 4, and you need to make your double crochet in the 3rd chain of that chain 4, because if you do it in the 4th chain, you won't have that chain 1 in between. See, I did it in the 4th one, and there's no space. So we need to make sure we go in that 3rd chain, even if it's snug like that one, and stitch our last double crochet, because we want to have that chain 1 in between for everything to lay smoothly. And that's the way that row 3 should look. And again, this is a swatch. You're going to have a lot more stitches. So we completed row 3, and we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, one of the things you notice that I'm struggling with is there is a thin piece of yarn that runs through this type of yarn, and it goes around, and the machine, when it makes it, it pulls it tight, and that's what causes those curls. But sometimes you can get that string separated and it can cause a problem. And that was the string I was dealing with back over here that was keeping me from making my stitches. That's another reason we need to stitch just a little bit loosely, or that can also become a problem, because you might run across parts in your yarn where that string is a little bit loose. All right, so I chained 4. We're going to turn our work, and again we're going to double crochet in that next double crochet and chain 1. And then again we're going to repeat across, stitching a double crochet in the next double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet, and chain 1. Okay, and then we'll just repeat that across, just like we did on row 2 and row 3. And by the time you get to row 4, you're a pro. You know exactly how to stitch this pattern. And again, the key is to stitch loosely. Don't let your tension get too tight, and it will lay beautiful. Like I said, once you get to this point, it's super easy. Just making sure you don't catch that extra piece of string that's going through it and don't stitch too tightly. And so basically row 4 is a repeat of row 3. So I completed row 4, again stitching loosely, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and our double crochets are always stitched in our double crochets with the chain 1s in between. Chain 4, and then we're going to repeat. And so what you're going to do is you're going to continue to repeat row 2 for 80 more rows. And I know that seems like a lot of rows, so measure as you go, make it the length that you want. If you want it shorter, do less rows. If you want it longer, do more. Because 1 row equals approximately 1 inch, and that will make it 84 rows long. If you're making it shorter, like me, I am only 5'2", and so I might want it a little bit shorter, although I made mine 84 rows long because I did want it super long, because I'm using mine as a wrap, because as big as it is, it can be a scarf or a wrap. All right, so you're going to continue to repeat row 2 for 80 more rows, or for the length that you want it. Just grab your tape measure and measure as you go. So here is my actual Supernova super scarf or shawl. It comes out super pretty and really, really easy. The main thing, like I keep saying, is to stitch loosely and make sure you stitch your double crochets in your double crochets with your chain 1s in between. This particular yarn is called Stellar from Red Heart, and it is a boucle, really super bumpy and soft. Once your scarf is the length that you want it, you just tie off and weave in your ends. You don't put any trim on it. It's not needed on the sides, it's not needed on the ends. And then the last thing we're going to do is add some fringe. And I'm the kind of person that I like my fringe to be long and a little bit uneven. But, you know, yours doesn't have to be that way. And I'm going to show you how to make your fringe and add it to your super scarf or wrap using my swatch. Once you've stitched your scarf or wrap shawl as long as you want it, you just tie off. Use your needle with your big eye. And then we'll just weave that in. One of the nice things about boucle or bumpy yarns is it's super easy to weave those ends in, because you want to go through stitches and fibers, and you've got lots of fuzzy fibers to stitch through. Because you want to make sure that's going to stay put. And then of course you would also go back and do this end. And so what I'm going to show you next is how to make your fringe and add it to your shawl or scarf. So I have my 6-inch ruler. And what I like to do is take my ruler. You can do this with a piece of cardboard. Just cut a 6-inch piece of cardboard. And then I'll hold it like this, and I'll wrap until I know how many I need. Now I put one in each of the chain 1 spaces, and then one on each of the ends of my super scarf. All right, now I'm going to make sure that I cut this on the same end where I started. Okay, so I just cut a few, and I usually do a few at a time. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll take 2 strands of that 12-inch piece of yarn. I'll take my hook, and I'm going to do it this way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go right in that first stitch, pull that through, loop it over my hook, and then pull that through like that. All right, now the next 2 loops are going to go in the chain 1 space. And I don't care if they're not perfectly even. You can always trim them, of course. So here's our first chain 1 space. And then across, I don't go in the double crochets. I just go in each of the chain 1 spaces. So I'll fold it in half, go in the next chain 1 space, and pull it through just like that. So I'm using 2 strands of 12-inch pieces of yarn cut in each of the chain 1 spaces. And I'll do this all the way across until I reach the end. And when I reach the end, I will put 2 in that last stitch, and that will help it lay really pretty. And that's how you add your fringe on. Once your fringe is on, you can always trim it. I didn't. What I did is I tried to take my needle and just sort of fluffed out the ends of each of them. And the more you wear it, the more fluffed out it will be. So now you know how to make the scarf and the fringe. Now make sure you add the fringe to both ends of your super scarf wrap shawl. The fringe adds so much extra to it and makes it so pretty. All right, that's how easy it is to make this wrap shawl or super scarf. It's a great project to use up those bumpy or boucle yarns that you don't like and make something really pretty and useful. So that's our Supernova oversized scarf and wrap shawl.